Geek. Talking baseball every week. 'Cause the Gleeman and the Geek.
And welcome to Gleeman and Geek, the cornucopia episode. We've just got all kinds of stuff to talk about, Mr. Gleeman.
We always do.
Pitchers leaving, TV changes, winter meetings.
Yeah.
Just a lot on our plate today.
Who are you?
I am John Bonus of TwinsDaily.com. With me, Aaron Gleeman.
Yeah, keep going.
I just wanted to see if you would jump in. That's part of your contractual obligation.
This is what your job is. You're the opening host.
Aaron Gleeman of The Athletic.
It's amazing.
We discovered on the Patreon last week that now Aaron is. Not
yet. You're not,
because Aaron. When Aaron signs his contract with The Athletic,
if anybody,
if he signs his contract with The Athletic, I am contractually obligated to introduce him as of The Athletic for every every podcast.
You get a percentage.
I don't think I do.
.00.
I don't think that was spelled out in the contract.
No, you don't have to now, though. Technically, so take that back. It should just be in the new contract. We got a lot to talk about. We were going to I was going to very coyly hint at news that Dick Bremer's replacement being announced today, and then the Twins. They were like, "Go ahead."
Star Tribune ran with it.
Yeah, sure broke the seal. It's going to be as we suspected. Cory Provus. We talked a lot about. We haven't really talked about this much the last few weeks.
We talked a lot about when
the actual news of Bremer leaving the booth, which was 3-4 weeks ago, something like that. And at the time, what we said kind of played out, I guess. But my assumption was that it would be Provus because he's been, in my opinion, doing a great job on the radio side. And while radio and TV obviously are a little bit different, in some ways a lot different. He's been the play-by-play voice. He does television play-by-play for college football, college basketball, and other stuff. I mean, I just think he's excellent at the job. He's also a very good guy, good, smart guy, all that stuff. But
he does a lot of prep.
Yes.
He's in a lot of things.
Yes, he's always in the managers' meetings with us and stuff like that, which is something I appreciate. He does the legwork on it in addition to just having the pipes and being a pro announcer and all that. There was, I guess, some possibility that similar to what the Wolves did.
Right. They go outside the organization.
That they had someone in mind who's the number 2 with another team or a minor league announcer or someone from another sport or whatever. But I never really got that sense. I kind of think they had this in mind the whole time. And at least I think you agree with me. And we said this when Bremer exited a month ago. To me, this is just such a no-brainer. And regardless of what you think of Bremer and the job he did over the last 40 years, and regardless of what you think about the way his tenure came to an end, and I know that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and I don't think they did it brilliantly or anything, the Twins. I'm hoping people give Cory Provus kind of a clean slate here and judge him on his own merits as opposed to, well, I'm still upset that Dick Bremer's not there. And
I think, if anything, maybe that reaction might have helped them in sticking with Provus, right? Like Provus already is a known presence. Nobody's going to be upset with Provus. Anybody who's listened to him on the radio knows how good he is already. He's already established a relationship with the fan base. Like that's the easy sort of way to make an easy transition from that.
And it's not like he worked to push Dick Bremer out.
Right. No, exactly right.
There's none of that.
Right. Plotting.
I mean, look, this is in like the high stakes world of whatever, but it's like, I could see that happening on some level.
Right. Yeah,
I'm sure that's happened over the years.
Right.
So I think Cory will do a great job. I think people will come to appreciate, like I said, the preparation that he puts into it, kind of the newer school approach he has, but I think he also, in terms of how he views and thinks about baseball and maybe some of the stats he drops in won't be batting average, won't be errors. They might be some other stuff, which obviously I appreciate. I'm guessing a lot of the people who listen to this appreciate. But then I think it's a nice mix where from like a broadcasting standpoint or just like stylistically, how he actually announces, setting aside the content of what he's putting in there. He's super old school. Like he's just a classic, big voice announcer.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good blend, which obviously Bremer had a good voice too. And I also think just in general, I don't know what they have planned on the analyst front. I'm assuming it will be the same core group.
They said it's going to be the same core group, basically.
And so I think that'll be interesting, too, because I do give...
A rotating group of...
of Morneau, Perkins, Smalley, etc. I give them some credit, and we've talked about this over the years, but for like Morneau especially, and then of late Perkins and Plouffe even jumped into the mix this past season. I give them some credit for kind of altering the way Bremer approached broadcast post Bert Blyleven. And I had a lot of what I think were legitimate criticisms of the Twins broadcasts the later years of the Bremer-Blyleven pairing. Yeah. And I felt it was just kind of stale, and I felt like they each knew what the other one was going to say at all times. They knew every story. I mean, they had been together for decades.
It had grown stale, right?
And so
it had fallen into a rut, I would suggest, yeah.
And so I think what I came to realize once Blyleven was no longer the analyst, which would that happen 4 or 5 years ago, maybe something like that?
Something like that.
I'm trying to phrase this in a way that is not just derogatory towards Bert Blyleven, but I realized, at least in my mind, that it was more Blyleven's doing than Bremer's doing. Now, maybe it's possible that Bremer kind of had a eureka moment once Blyleven left and said, "I'm going to change."
Role started getting diminished. Right, he started saying.
But in my opinion, once Morneau replaced Blyleven, it kind of I don't know. It freshened the way that Bremer also approached the broadcast, because he no longer could just be on autopilot and assume that Blyleven's going to say the same 9 catchphrases and circle people and all that. And I feel like it forced him to view things a little differently, set up his partner a little differently, maybe get into different discussions with Morneau, who's obviously a recently retired player. Right. Perkins, Plouffe, same thing. And so I really thought that the broadcast improved dramatically, which is not something I think should be expected for years, 35 through 40 of the same play-by-play guy. Right. So I give Bremer a lot of credit for that, but I also give Morneau and the other analysts, even someone like Roy Smalley, who's been with both kind of eras on the broadcast. But so that said, now you're bringing in Provus to shake things up a little bit, obviously. But I think Provus, sort of stylistically or just the way they think, is going to be a more seamless fit with Morneau. I can tell you they already have a good relationship, just behind the scenes watching them BS with each other or whatever. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. I find Cory Provus to be both excellent at his job. Within that, excellent in a way I appreciate, which is that he's a grinder, which is he just doesn't assume he's going to do good work. He actually goes out and does the good work, which is something I appreciate a lot. And then I also just find him to be maybe the most pleasant person I've ever met in my entire life. Well, you ain't even. At first glance, you would be at the top of the list, but I know better.
600 some episodes later,
you've been plummeting down the list. You're like in others receiving votes territory at this point. You did not make the playoff ranking or whatever for that. But Cory, I hope he continues to do this. Every time Cory sees me for the past 3 years, the first time he sees me each day at Target Field, he sings Aaron Gleeman to the tune of Willie Beeman from Any Given Sunday. And if people don't know that, you could YouTube it. Some of the lyrics are a little juicy, but he sings that in the hallway, so I appreciate that. That's the easy way to get on my good set. So, I don't know. I know some people are still rubbed the wrong way about the way Bremer exited. I know just in general, and this to me is rightfully feel like no matter how he exited, good or bad, after 40 years, it just leaves kind of a hole in a lot of people's hearts that they've gotten used to from Bremer. And I absolutely get all that, but I just hope if you give Cory Provus a chance, I think Cory Provus can be a guy in 30 years where people are going like, oh, it's sad to see Cory Provus leave after 35 years in the booth or whatever. I think he can be a sort of the rightful heir. And honestly, the Twins, mostly on the radio side, but also Bremer now for the last 40 years, have had some incredible runs as their lead announcer. I mean, Carneal, obviously, and John Gordon, and even Cory's been there for over a decade, 12 years, 13 years, something like that. So I'm excited about that.
I was hearing the same things you were, but I was a little surprised that they were going to kind of maintain that continuity. And I kind of wondered if that really would happen, or if they would do a bigger search, an outside search, something like that. One of the things that I think were slowly seeing in the Twins organization is just sort of some turnover at some long-held positions. I mean, we started with Terry Ryan being switched and Derek Foley and that whole thing changing. Right, that was one thing. Bremer moving on is another thing. The ownership change,
right?
Another thing, Joe Polad coming in there for Jim, another big change, right? They just tried to do the rebranding of all the uniforms and stuff, try to go to with a different Twins logo, and I was wondering if this would be following that route. I mean, Dave St. Peter's been around a long time. I don't know how much longer he's going to be doing that. I mean, there's a lot of we're kind of getting to a nexus point of a lot of change here over about a 5 or 10 year period as one generation of Twins caretakers, whether that caretaking is, the president or the GM or the announcer or the brand or whatever, is kind of giving way to another generation of caretaking. And I wondered if that would be if we would see a change in part because of that. Not to mention, Joe Polite clearly isn't afraid to make some big changes, whether it's the branding and such like that. Does he go in a completely different direction with something like that? Also, TV broadcast. Now, that's not necessarily something they were trying to change, right? But it is something that for maybe that's being more driven by the switch from streaming to TV, or from TV to streaming. So I wasn't as sure that they would stick this way, but I just feel like it's in safe hands with Cory Provus.
Right. That's kind of
what I mean. When I come down to I just feel like and we should also mention on the radio side.
Yes, Chris Atterbury, who's been the pregame and postgame host, but also the number 2 sort of fill-in backup play-by-play guy, will be replacing Cory as the lead play-by-play guy, presumably with Dan Gladden still as the lead analyst.
Right. Well, presumably.
I don't know. They haven't said anything.
They haven't said that yet.
But I'm guessing that's the case. Yeah, I mean, I think they're in good hands there, obviously, too. I mean, Chris Atterbury's been there forever.
Right. Yes,
and he's another someone I definitely enjoy talking to. He knows, other than the fact that he constantly brings up Stanford, much like Doe. It is amazing how quickly you find out. That people always joke, how do you know if someone's vegan? They'll tell you or something like that. Same thing with Stanford. And maybe it's just these 2 particular Stanford graduates that I spend a lot of time with at the ballpark. But man, they let you know they're from Stanford.
And you let them know that you're a non-graduate at the University of Minnesota.
Hey, buddy, let me tell you, I flunked out of the 9th best Big Ten school or whatever. So yes, Chris Atterbury replacing Provus. Provus moving to the TV side. I think all you said was correct. You can refresh things obviously by bringing in new blood or outside blood, and I do think that was important in terms of Falvey and Levine came from Cleveland and Texas, and Baldelli came from Tampa Bay, and all that stuff. I do think after so many decades of promoting from within, almost exclusively, on off the field, in the front office, on the business side, all that stuff. I mean, that was a point of pride, and rightfully, Dave St. Peter will be like, well, I started in ticket sales or whatever it is, and now I run the team. And so even Bill Smith, who was the GM for a while.
By the way, it was the Twins Pro Shop. He started by running the Twins Pro Shop.
I gave him too much credit for the initial foot in the door role. And I know, Bill Smith, maybe Bill Smith was a ticket sales or something like that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, although I would say that the point that the Twins got to at the end of the Terry Ryan regime, where there had been no new blood really at all, they were struggling on and off the field, I feel like, and I think it was needed. So now you're, 7 or 8 years later, and you can still make that argument, and I think your points about how Joe Polad viewed things and just in general is accurate, but you can also create that same thing by changing roles as opposed, to me, I'm sure they had some conversation of, whether before or after they decided Bremer was not going to continue for a 41st season. I'm sure there were conversations that extended beyond Cory Provus. But to me, it's do we think we're going to get somebody better than Cory?
Right.
And that's a pretty, in my mind, and obviously in their mind too, that's a very high bar.
Yeah, right.
Now,
I agree.
Are there announcers who have more experience on television than him for baseball? Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And so maybe they have a leg up. But just in terms of pure announcing ability, and he's relatively young, which is key. He can hold this job for a long time. There aren't that many guys who are as good or better than him. And so, yeah, you could have brought in a totally new voice, but is that just change for change's sake? And then also, do you then risk losing Cory Provus from the radio side?
I thought about that too. I mean, the other thing is that there's so much up in the air with the TV situation right now.
I wish we had more info to share on that.
We don't have any idea
I do
what's
think
going on.
It's going to be sooner than later. Like, I don't think this is going to extend. Again, this is just me trying to poke and prod with talking to people. I don't think it's going to extend like into February on the TV side, but it's not necessarily in their control fully. Like, I think the Twins would love to get whatever it's going to be in place.
Right.
Good, bad, middle, whatever. But some of it is like they do need to exhaust all options. They need to, kind of play through some of these
the latest is
things.
that they're back in conversations with Bally Sports North about potentially doing something.
And there was also, Ken Rosenthal had an interesting article on The Athletic yesterday about some other teams that are being affected. And he mentioned Cleveland, the Cleveland Guardians, who we talked about them a couple of weeks ago, that they're already kind of shedding payroll or preparing for a under $100 million payroll, which by comparison – Twins fans are freaking out about probably like $130 million payroll or higher. Right. But he also included the Texas Rangers along with the Cleveland Guardians as the
They had such an enormous amount of...
Yes, although it was relatively near the end, but it was paying them... So what Rosenthal said was those are the two teams in the most jeopardy of having their contracts with Bally eliminated or discarded in the bankruptcy filing, because Bally now at the point is they can just sort of hit the eject button and say we're not paying that. And you go, well, Texas Rangers, I mean, Dallas, Fort Worth or whatever is a massive market, obviously, and they just literally won the World Series.
Biggest market, right? Yeah.
So why would the Rangers be in danger at all? Well, they're getting, as you said, as part of it was an over decade-long contract that they signed, $110 million a year.
Right, yeah.
And for instance, Cleveland and also the Twins were getting roughly $55 million a year. So the Twins deal expired, and it's unfortunate that the Twins...
And the other deals that don't expire can essentially be expired because they filed for bankruptcy, and that allows you to get out of those contracts.
They can pick and choose and basically just say, which is... This is mind-numbing to me that this is the case, but I just don't know much about. I'm no business mind, where they can just go, yeah, we filed for bankruptcy. We can choose some of these to keep and some of them not. It's like, well, what good was the contract then? Like what? Anyway, but the Twins, because their deal expired, they're getting bloodier as the first one through the door than most everyone else. And they're taking all the heat and criticism for, well, why are they lowering payroll after their only playoff win in 20 years and all that stuff? And I'm not saying that criticism is not justified. But all I'm saying is wait like 8 months. They're going to have a whole bunch of other teams in the same boat. And it might be like, wait 8 weeks, and they're going to have teams in that boat. I mean, San Diego and Arizona have already
in that boat,
experienced that. They're now in the same boat as the Twins trying to figure out what's next for them. So that's 3 out of 30 teams in that spot. Ken Rosenthal pointed out Cleveland and Texas might at any time just have their deals dropped, in which case they're in the same spot. And with Cleveland, that means an even lower payroll than usual, which they've had very low payrolls for a long time now. And then with Texas, who have spent a ton of money over the last several years, Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, Jacob deGrom, and have been linked to Shohei Ohtani this offseason. Rosenthal's article was like, well, they might still be able to spend that money, but they're sort of in this middle ground, which the Twins also find themselves in a slightly different version of. They don't know how it's going to play out. And so how can you spend, $200 million in free agency or $500 million in free agency on Shohei Ohtani when you're either going to be getting $110 million for next season from local TV or, zero or, $30 million or something like that. And so the criticism of the Twins lowering payroll, I think, is not unjustified, but we've tried to lay it out so that at least people know kind of the logic behind it that doesn't explain away why don't billionaires just pick up the slack argument, which I totally see that. And so I think we're very, very close to this bubble fully bursting. Like, I think it's already sort of burst, and there's like almost a delay to it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Like, delayed fuse on some of these things.
This thing burst, but there's like maybe 1 year where they can kind of patch the holes as the water's coming through for the status quo. And I will be absolutely shocked if come this time next year, if more than half the teams still have a deal on local television.
I wonder if we're not going to have, the Twins and Diamondbacks and Padres, maybe a couple other teams, will try to patch something together for 1 year. That is, I think, sort of the thought process of going back to Bally Sports North and talking to them. Let's do, because we're already seeing it with the NBA and NHL, who've extended basically 1 year left on their deal, right? And saying, okay, that gives us another year, for us locally to get our act together, right? To see what the options are, because there just don't seem to be any options. I mean, they can get their stuff on TV, they just can't get paid for it, right?
Or they can potentially get paid, attempt to maximize or minimize the loss of revenue by going to a subscriber-only model and selling it as sort of a premium product, but then you minimize the eyes on it, basically. And so those are their two choices. So yeah, you kick the decision down the road.
But it also gives a chance for MLBAM, Major League Baseball Advanced Media, to try and handle this at a greater scale that will help, 10 teams or 12 teams or 15 teams.
In terms of if, for instance, right now, if it's just the Padres, the Diamondbacks, and the Twins, you can't really approach any sort of national outlet and say, hey, we got...
We're starting a new television.
The number, we have the number 18, 22, and 24 media markets for you, baby. But like you said, a year from now, if everyone just sort of, holds down the fort for a year and the Twins re-up with Bally or just find a 1 year solution locally or whatever, and, Cleveland and Texas and some other teams like that just put off a decision for a year or convince Bally's to pay them for a full year, then maybe you hit this thing again next offseason and you have 10 teams under that umbrella. And then you could potentially go to Amazon or Apple TV, or you could launch a, separate version of MLB TV local where you're actually offering, got some meat behind it. I don't know that that's going to be the case, but the Twins, it's funny when, like, going back a year or two, the idea that their deal with Bally was expiring was, a in-flux position, and there's some risk associated with that. It makes people nervous, but it wasn't viewed as like, oh, that's a terrible thing. Well, and then the Bally's entire corporation collapsed. The whole business model collapsed. And then it was like, oh, man, the Twins are in pretty good shape here because they're not stuck with Bally's anymore. They can just be free. Well, then it turns out now you're the only free team along with the Padres and Diamondbacks. And now you're like, well, now what do we do? Because, yes, we're out here on our own. Our leverage is limited because we're just ourselves. And now there's the sense that a year from now or a month from now, there's going to be another influx of teams in the same situation. So it's like, well, do we wait this out? Do we try to join forces with them? Does MLB have much bigger plans that they might even say to the Twins, like, hold down the fort here, don't do anything, don't sign any 10-year deals anywhere, because we're actually making a wide-scale changes to the whole product. And so, I don't know. It puts the Twins in a very difficult situation.
For local TV, they've got to negotiate with one corporation, Comcast, right? It's very similar to the 2006 year that they were trying to launch Victory Sports, and
earlier. It was earlier than that. Because I know, because I was in college.
Okay, whatever. The point is that they you got to figure out some way. It's not just purely in the Twins' hands. They are dealing with a cable network that is ubiquitous throughout the Twin Cities, and they get to decide whether or not you get a channel or don't get a channel.
Right. So that's where the TV side is. I'd love to be able to talk about both, but Provus is in. Twins' overall situation is still in flux, but
the fact that
they're going to soon have a lot of company in these sort of now what,
and the fact that TV revenue is going away, it may cover some of the other news that we're going to cover this week. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of our sponsors. Speaking of meaty topics, Grody Beef. We have talked about.
We're going with that. Did I read your mind on that?
Yes, you're exactly right. Yeah, Grody Beef. That's right. You remember Grody Beef because we had a meat raffle. Gleeman the Geek had a meat raffle at Grody Beef with, I don't know, hundreds of dollars worth of beef.
With some crazy amount of steaks and everything.
We've got, you're going to hear about a little bit more about them this week and next because it's the holiday season. And when you don't know I tell you what, I'm going to buy my son in Japan. No, I'm not going to buy him Grody Beef and send it to Japan because that's a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
And they only deliver within the Twin Cities area, right? But my son is going to be very excited to be getting steaks. for Christmas. And you can give that as well. They've got these great holiday beef packages. Looking for something to give that person that's tough to buy for, look no further than a Grody Beef holiday package. $75, $125, $175, $225 options, or create your own personalized combination. All holiday packages include assortment of steaks, roasts, and ground beef. They all come in a decorative box that makes it easy to be given as a gift. And they will find a time to deliver this box to you in time for your holiday celebration. Or
you can just pick it up. It's a farm in Minnesota.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, this is a family farm that's been around since 1856. Nurstrand, yeah.
Nurstrand, Minnesota, since
that's right.
1856.
Sixth generation of beef. And I can tell you, they make really good steaks.
Yeah. John is housing these steaks.
I haven't told you
on
this.
A daily basis.
I haven't told you this. The fee that we're getting paid for this, my half is coming in steaks.
Smart. Yeah. No, you're
going to be making the money. I'm getting steaks.
John is.
That's how much I like this.
Is their number one customer basically at this point. So
they don't offer shipping, but they will deliver to the metro area and always have on-farm pickup available. You come to see where the food comes from. In fact, they'll deliver to any place within 70 miles of Faribault. That includes the Twin Cities metro area, Rochester, Mankato, Northern Iowa, and Western Wisconsin. Check out Grody Beef. It's Grote. Grote Beef, BEEF.com. Grody Beef, one word. And use the code word Gleeman, and you're going to get 20% off your holiday package. So, again, use that code word Gleeman. Save yourself some money on the holiday package.
Another good place to go for some last-minute holiday ideas.
Yeah.
Or even not last minute now. Soda Stick. Soda like Minnesota. SodaStickCo.com, or just Google Soda Stick. And any orders made by the 13th of December, they are guaranteeing delivery for Christmas.
That's right.
So that's good for stocking stuffers. We always talk about Soda Stick. They're sort of small batch, very creative. I don't want to say inside jokes, but like more insidery. It's not just a shirt with the team logo on it.
And more
Anybody
niche
can
stuff.
get
Like
that.
they've got a curling club T-shirt right now that's kind of going on. If you go out to their site, you're going to find stuff. They've got a great deal on a beanie right now. I think that's while supplies last.
A free beanie if you spend $99 or more.
Right, which is great.
And you can also use the promo code Gleeman for 15% off. Just go to sodastickco.com. That's soda like Minnesota, or just Google Soda Stick.
Correct.
Okay, so the Twins have officially lost. Well, I don't want to say all three free agent pitchers, because they also had Tyler Mahle and Dallas Keuchel and Dylan Floro and some other guys.
Sure.
But the three prominent free agent pitchers have all signed very quickly. I mean, to all sign before the end of November is a rarity.
I mean, Pagán was one of maybe three relievers that have come up with a significant deal.
There's only been like 7 or 8 signings.
It's been a slow-moving free agent market, and they're all coming from the Twins.
Three of them are the Twins. So Sonny Gray gets a 3-year, $75 million deal from the St. Louis Cardinals. Kenta Maeda gets a 2-year, $24 million deal from the Detroit Tigers. And then Emilio Pagán, the most recent one, gets a 2-year, $16 million deal from the Cincinnati Reds. And the remarkable thing, the Gray and Maeda deals are pretty much in line with what we've been talking about for the last month in terms of their market. I think,
and we should just mention, we did discuss these in depth. I don't know how in depth we're going to go on this, but we did talk about them in depth for like an hour.
Yes,
on the Patreon back on Tuesday, with the news pretty much broke for both of them Sunday night, Monday morning. So we did a Patreon on Tuesday where we covered this for half, and then the mailbag for half, and really dove into the reaction and so on.
Patreon's a good holiday gift too.
That is a good
for yourself,
yes, that's
for your loved one, for someone you hate. It works all three ways. Like, here, you're my biggest villain. You have to listen to the Twins talk.
If you do sign up for it, you can get the back archives free, so you can just go totally ad free, and you can just go listen to that.
So those two, Sonny Gray, what we've been talking about since like mid-season, basically is a 3 or 4 year deal worth 20-something million a year.
Right.
And he ends up getting a 3-year deal worth $25 million a year. It also has a 4th-year option. It's got deferred money. It's a little bit of it's an interesting deal. Kenta Maeda, the thing we've talked about with him this whole time is kind of the price point of like 10 to 15 million a year for a salary was very much expected. The only question with him was 1-year deal versus 2-year deal. And it's pretty clear the Twins were interested in a reunion with him. I'm sure a half dozen other teams minimally were interested in Maeda, that the Tigers basically just said, we'll step forward with a second year to get this done. And for Maeda, who's 36 years old and coming off elbow surgery a year ago, and is just now finishing what was an 8-year contract that he signed with the Dodgers in 2016, leaving Japan as a completely untested,
$24 million worth of guaranteed money over 8 years.
It's one of the more. It's tough to blame Maeda or his agent because, he didn't have a whole lot of leverage. He was an excellent pitcher in Japan, but 10 years ago or 8 years ago, there was a lot more skepticism about Japanese players coming over. I mean, obviously you had the previous wave with Ichiro and Matsui had changed the game there, but it's much more.
There were concerns about his durability.
Right, all that stuff, because he wasn't, a guy who threw 95 or whatever, but he signed a deal that was 8 years and only $24 million or $25 million guaranteed, which is absurd. And it each year only guaranteed him $3.1 million as your base salary, and then he could earn up to like $9 or $10 million in incentives that were tied to games started and innings pitched. Well, with the Dodgers, they at the end of season would move him to the bullpen to prepare him for a playoff role, and he was great in the playoff bullpen. But it cost him money because he wouldn't get as many starts and innings, and that played a part in him being traded to the Twins. And then just when he started to do that, his first season was the COVID season. So they only played 60 games, so they prorated the incentives and all that. And then he blew out his elbow in the middle of the second season or at the end of the second season. So he has not earned. I mean, he's done fine for himself. I'm not saying the Maeda family is hurting, but he's been one of them.
This was a chance to cash in,
at age 36, and so to get a 2-year deal, $12 million a year. I think it's 10 this year or 10 this season, and then 14 in 2025 or whatever. But good for him. It's not to me. My expectation, and hopefully we've made this clear on the show a billion times, from the moment they traded for Gray. My expectation, and I believe the Twins' plan was, they traded Chase Petty for Sonny Gray in March of 2022, right before the 2022 season. And Chase Petty had been the number 26 pick in the draft that the summer previous, like 6 months earlier. And the plan was trade a late first-round pick, basically, for 2 seasons of Sonny Gray. Hopefully they're good, healthy seasons.
Hopefully they're good enough that you can give him a qualifying offer.
And then at the end of the second season, he'll be a free agent. You give him the qualifying offer. He rejects it. That's exactly what happened. And then you recoup, once he signs elsewhere, which he did with the Cardinals, a late first-round pick for it. And so what it ended up being now is it's not this year's pick is not completely set in stone, but it'll be somewhere in the 30 to 35 range as a compensatory pick. You end up basically trading the number 26 pick in 2021 for the number, let's say, 33 pick in 2024 and 2 seasons of Sonny Gray. That is an absolutely incredible trade that the Twins pulled off. Now, obviously, Chase Petty can go on and have a Hall of Fame career, and that will change the way people look at this trade. But just in terms of like functionality of what did you trade and what did you get? You traded a late first-round pick for a late first-round pick, moving down 6 or 7 spots, and 2 seasons of Sonny Gray, one of which was good and one of which was excellent.
Cy Young caliber.
Yes, runner-up for the Cy Young. And so now that's separate from the notion of how much does losing him hurt the rotation, which is a lot. Should they have?
And we will dive into like what's next. Now, that's
should they have tried to match that offer and all that? But I mean, I will just say that at no point has the expectation been that they would re-sign Sonny Gray. Now, look, if he hit the open market and he was struggling to get a 2-year deal at this sort of salary, maybe in February or something, they jump back in and say, look, we bring you back. But he clearly had absolutely no trouble getting a market. It sounds like...
I mean, there was discussion about whether or not they should trade him away at the trade deadline.
Well, there was discussion. I would tell people to think about who was doing that discussing. But yes.
But I mean, I think those same people are the ones saying, well, they should have re-signed him, no?
Well, that's sort of the game for those type of discussions, right? But yeah, so those two aren't surprises to me. I think I would have given them coming into the offseason much more chance of re-signing Maeda than Gray, and then knowing the actual deals. Yeah. If you said Sonny Gray signed 3 years, $75 million, Kenta Maeda signed 2 years, $24 million, which one of those was with the Twins? I certainly would have picked the Maeda deal. Sure, but it doesn't surprise me that they didn't re-sign either of them. I think 3 years and $75 million for Sonny Gray is fair value to me. The Twins First of all, they've never spent $20 million total contract, not per year. $20 million is the most they've ever given a free agent pitcher. And that was Michael Pineda on a 2-year deal to re-sign him, whatever it was, 5 years ago or whatever. So the idea that they're going to give $75 million to a free agent pitcher is fairly unlikely to begin with. It's certainly not going to be a 34-year-old guy coming off a career year, throwing his most innings in 8 years or whatever. And then with Maeda, 2 years, $24 million is much more reasonable for any team, or less risk filled with any team. But he's 36 years old. He threw 100 innings last year. I don't know. It's not a surprise. On the other hand, the Pagán contract to me. Now, look, my feelings on Pagán, they changed because he had a really nice season. I give him a ton of credit. We talked about that during the season, obviously. But I wouldn't have brought him back for this season, and they did, and they got really good value out of him. Although I will note that he never really was given more than a medium leverage role. I think that was intentional. But he did have a really nice season in sort of a secondary setup man role. And obviously made a fan.
And in kind of various roles too. Like sometimes a little bit, sometimes
the
2-3 innings
with Pagán is never in question. I mean, he's one of the guys who shows up every day and says, "I can pitch today." And
occasionally a high leverage spot, mostly low leverage spot, occasionally long, inning eatings type spot.
Yes, back to back days, all that. Sure. I mean, I know they valued that a lot, but 2 years, $16 million, and also I don't know why they needed to do this, but he had as a player option for the second year. Which means if he somehow has a great year and thinks he could get more than $8 million next year,
he ends up at the closer for the Reds.
Yes. I mean, whatever. He can opt out, and so it's only a 2-year, $16 million deal if he wants it to be. Otherwise, it can be a 1-year, $8 million deal, and he can leave. To me, and given the Reds, like they're similar boat to the Twins in terms of typical spending, maybe even a little below a lot of times. I don't get it.
This is the thing we said about Pagán though for the last 2 years, right? The underlying metrics on him look so good that you're like, we're going to outsmart everybody. This guy never has really pitched to his ability. We take a look at those spin rates and the movement and all that.
But I'm not even saying he's not worth making being your biggest bullpen addition for a team that has aspirations of contending. Like, to me, that's like, he pitched really well. He's got good stuff, all that. He wouldn't be at the top of my list, but obviously he's really good. I'm just saying, 2 years, $16 million for a secondary setup man, maybe a setup man. That's like premium money in free agency. Like, that is not just for the Twins, but and also the Reds seem to have many, many more needs than the guy who pitches the 7th inning for them.
I'll be honest with you, I have not spent a lot of time evaluating the relief market, the free agent relief market, because I didn't think the Twins were going to be dabbling in it all, so I didn't give a damn.
I mean, just the 2-year component is relatively rare.
Is he one of the top 5 relievers on the market?
I mean, I don't know. I'd put him in the same bucket as a dozen guys probably, something like that. But, I mean, he's not one of the top 3 or 4.
Okay.
It's like Josh Hader, those type of guys. But yeah, I mean, there's always going to. That's the thing about the relief market, and it's why I don't get that upset that the Twins don't really jump into it. I do think they've made a mistake by not, targeting one guy on a 1-year deal in some of these off seasons. But for the most part, it's just like pick a guy you kind of like and get him on a deal that doesn't hurt you. And obviously, the Reds valued Pagán more than just a guy we kind of like. They must have had him number 1 on their target list to sign him to a 2-year deal with a player option for $8 million a year before the end of November is basically telling you they really wanted Emilio Pagán. But I
mean, and you do see players at that side in this time of the year.
That's another thing.
Get a premium deal. Maybe the extra year than they think they're going to get.
It's
or
not a surprise
more,
if you look at Gray and Maeda and Pagán. What you just said, which is the motivation to sign early.
Right.
If you're a player who's going to be in relatively high demand, almost always is, wow, that guy got more than I thought he was going to get. If you sign before certainly before the end of November, but even before mid-December or something like that, like before Christmas even. It's like, well, why did this guy sign? Well, he signed because they offered him 10%, 20% more than the the kind of projected or expected amount.
Otherwise, the players, if they're good players, right? Take a look and say, listen, there's going to be more teams that want me than there are people like me, right? I'm going to wait for the people above me to sign, and that will leave 3 teams left over who didn't get, Josh Hader and didn't get, the various big names, and I'll have 3 guys, 3 teams that are like, we're going to either get Pagán or we're getting somebody worse than Pagán, and then that's when I'll get my salary, or I'll get paid, right? And so if you're going to sign early like that, like I think you like to compare it to like an eBay buy now option, something like that, you're going to have to pay a little bit more, right?
Yeah, and so it doesn't, a team like the Cardinals, who have made no secret, have been very public in, our pitching was a disaster, we're going to go out and add 3 starting pitchers.
That's right.
Well, you look what they did. They signed Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, and Sonny Gray, who are like 3 of the oldest, most experienced starting pitchers, for a total of almost $50 million for next year, and they did it by the end of November.
Right.
Like, so okay, and they $25 million a year is pretty good for Sonny Gray. Kenta Maeda, sort of same thing. Like the Tigers, I'm guessing, were not Kenta Maeda's number one destination that he would have loved.
Sure,
but they might have been the only team to step up with a fully guaranteed 2-year deal for a 36-year-old with some arm problems. And obviously, I don't see Pagán beating 2. I'm honestly shocked by that. I'm not trying to like kick Pagán on his way out or anything. I did plenty of that, and he proved me wrong this past season, very much so. But a 2-year deal for relievers, you don't see that much in general.
Right.
I think the Twins have signed one reliever to a 2-year deal ever, and it was, I believe, almost exactly this price point with Addison Reed. It was their first offseason at the helm.
Yeah, you're right.
And it went very, very poorly.
Yes, it did.
I don't know. Are you going to look back? I guess I would say, are you going to look back at the end of this offseason, like let's say in February, whatever, and line up all the relievers that signed? And is Pagán significantly better or less risky or higher upside or however, whatever you value, than a whole bunch of guys who signed 1-year $7 million deals or 1-year $10 million deals? And it seems unlikely to me. But again, I'm going to be the low man on Emilio Pagán. I will say, like, for his, obviously he got paid. If someone offers you this, you take it. If you're Emilio Pagán and his agent, especially with the player option, it's nutty. But that's a real bad ballpark for an extreme fly ball pitcher. Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati is one of the more, always has been, one of the more home run inflating ballparks. And Emilio Pagán has changed a lot of things over the last year in terms of pitch mix and his grip on some off-speed stuff and cutter usage and all that. But he went from a fly ball pitcher to an extreme fly ball pitcher this year. I think he only had like 30% ground balls, where the league average is like 50%. Right. He's got one of the highest home run rates of all time as is, and hasn't necessarily pitched in. He pitched Target Field, San Diego, Tampa Bay, Oakland, and Seattle, I think, are the 5 spots. Those collectively are pretty good spots to be a fly ball pitcher. Now he's going to a spot that is a very bad spot to be a fly ball pitcher. So I don't know. That seems risky to me. But the Reds, I don't know. I view the Reds as a smart front office, because I know of the backgrounds of some of the guys in decision-making positions. But their on-field product hasn't really borne that out. You know what I mean? Necessarily.
They had a nice year last year for most of the year. They were in until the end.
Yeah, they didn't make the play.
They didn't make the playoffs.
No,
and it's the NL Central.
Yes, they have a good farm. They have a very good farm system. Okay, so
it's because it's a lot of ex-Twins.
Ex-Twins in the farm system. Yeah, they have half the Twins' old farm. You're right. No, you're right about that. That's how the Twins got Sonny Gray also.
Right.
So I did read something when Sonny Gray signed with the Cardinals. There was an article from one of the national reporters who said, the Reds were in the mix for Sonny Gray, which that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Trade him away 2 years later, sign him.
That's funny. That's one of the things about the
Reds
Sonny
maybe
Gray
have
contract.
money.
I'm wondering, I'll be interested to see.
Apparently.
There are a couple teams like that are sort of on the rise, and I'm wondering just how much they're going to lean into it. The Reds are one of them. Baltimore Orioles are another one. Will they actually?
To me, if the Orioles don't spend money now at this point, especially on pitching, their fans have no interest in criticizing the team because they're going to be good now for a decade. They have incredible young talent through 7 years of just outright tanking. They got number 1 picks, number 2 picks, and they've hit on almost all of them. They probably have the best collection of young position player talent since the Astros, at the early Correa days. Right. And so they're going to win. They're going to win for a long time. But they need pitching, and their payroll is like zero because all these guys are making the minimum salary. And I was surprised at the deadline they didn't go out and get more pitching help.
Yeah, right.
And if they don't spend money now and they keep trotting out a $75 million payroll in a pretty big market in a tough division, it just seems like
with as much high upside.
Yeah, it
young
seems like a
talent as
missed
they've got
opportunity.
This all leads to where the Twins are going to go next, and that leads to the winter meetings. We're going to talk about that in a second, but first let's cover a couple more of our sponsors. Raycon Earbuds has been a supporter of Gleeman and the Geek for a long time, and they make a great Christmas present. It's also a Christmas present that's not going to bust your budget because they are fantastically well-designed wireless earbuds that you wear, well-engineered, do all the stuff that the more expensive brand stuff does, but they start out at, a fraction of the price of some of those things. And then on top of that, we're going to give you a code here in a second for 15% off of even that.
If you go to Buy Raycon, B-U-Y, like buying it, Buy Raycon, that's BUYRAYCON.com/Gleeman, you'll get 15% off your entire Raycon order. So it's a perfect last minute gift or even to ring in the new year. That's buyraycon.com/Gleeman to get 15% off Raycon products. Buyraycon.com.
Yeah, they've racked up tens of thousands of 5-star reviews. Easy free return options, offer free shipping, and buy now, pay later options. Again, buyraycon.com and then use that promo code Gleeman.
Now, our last sponsor today, if you're hopping on the Timberwolves bandwagon, welcome. I've been here for 40 years, and we're mostly miserable, but things are looking up.
Sure.
Good way to get last-minute tickets. Go to Target Center.
Sure.
With the Game Time app, John has used it a ton to go to Twins games.
That's right.
The beauty of it is their specialty is hard to find tickets, and it can be sporting events, shows, comedy, everything, and also last-minute tickets. And you've put that to the test by getting up from a bar stool several blocks from Target Field and then opening the app while walking there. That's right. And then by the time you get to, gate 34 or whatever you're walking into, you have the tickets on your phone. That's with the Game Time app. It's an app, not a website. So you just go to the Game Time app, you download it, you create an account, and then if you use the code Gleeman within the app, you get $20 off your first purchase. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Just create an account, redeem the code Gleeman, Gleeman, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, just to finish up on the three pitchers, because, we'll never, they're banned from being talked about on the show. Once you leave us, out of sight, out of mind, buddy. Let's see, I had one other. Oh, so in terms of replacing them.
Right.
Now, it's tricky because I think particularly in Gray's case, even if Gray were still here, the odds of Gray himself replicating or replacing his 2023 performance were minimal.
Right.
He threw his most innings with his best ERA in 8 years. Yeah. I also think it's interesting that at no point did anyone give the Twins any credit for getting a career year basically out of Sonny Gray at age 33 after years of durability issues. He's always been a really good pitcher, but they kept him healthier than anybody has. They got him more innings than anyone ever has. It doesn't quite jibe with this whole, he hated playing for Rocco and they hit quick hooks. It's like, pick one or the other. You can't have quick hooks and pitch your most innings in 8 years.
Finishing second in the AL Cy Young tends to smooth over any rough edges.
Yes.
Right.
But so how do you view, these three guys are leaving. They pitched almost 360 innings for the Twins last year, 3.25 ERA, somewhere between 7 or 8 wins above replacement, depending on which version of wins above replacement you want to look at. Leaves a big hole in a 13-man pitching staff, basically. You're losing essentially a number 1/number 2 starter in Gray. I would say a number 3/number 4 starter in Maeda, and like I said, a secondary setup man.
Sure.
Obviously, the Reds are paying him just to be a setup man or maybe a closer. Who knows? But for the Twins' purposes, and yet it's like, well, okay. Would you expect Sonny Gray to throw another 180 something innings with a sub-3 ERA? Well, no, he doesn't really do that, especially at age 34. Would you expect Pagán to be the version we saw as opposed to the previous?
I think a lot of people are weeping that Pagán has left the team.
Sure, I get it. And with Maeda, we talked about this on the Patreon. Maeda's overall numbers are like sort of mediocre, not only for this past season, but for his whole Twins career. They're like okay, but nothing special. But the weird thing about the Maeda experience over 4 years with the Twins, he was either amazing, for 2020, he finished runner-up for the Cy Young in the shortened season. And then at the end of this season, he was great.
Yep.
Once he returned in like June, he had a 80-inning stretch where he had a 3-something ERA, great strikeout numbers. Except then he missed all of 2022, and then in 2021, he was kind of not very good until it was revealed he was pitching through some elbow problems and then shut it down. You never got a mediocre Maeda.
Yeah. His overall stats were that of mid-rotation veteran. Except, but he was never a mid-rotation
He was either
veteran,
top of the rotation or horrible/injured.
Yes,
basically,
right.
is the version you got of it. And so even trying to figure out, well, how do they replace that is tricky. I also think, and this is just more of an oddity than some like substantial analysis attempt here, but the Twins were 14 and 18 in Gray's starts last season because they gave him 0 run support, and they were 10 and 10 in Maeda's starts. So you went 24 and 28 when those guys were on the mound. Now, I'm not telling you that as any meaningful predictive value. Right. I'm not telling you should use that as a way to downgrade how you thought of their performance. They have no ability to affect how the lineup supports them. Sure. All I'm saying is they didn't actually win that often. Right. The games they won a lot of games last year, but they were below 500 with Gray on the mound and below 500 with the two of them on the mound. So again, it clouds the how do you replace them picture. You can say we have to replace a frontline starter, a mid-rotation starter, and a setup man. You can say you have to replace 360 innings of a 3.25 ERA, or you could say you have to replace what would likely have been a regressed version of Gray, a shakier version of Maeda, and who knows what you're getting from Pagán. And also, they had a losing record with those guys. I think it makes it very tricky to like wrap your hands around what do they actually need to do, other than I think you can say. And Dan Hayes wrote an article about Chris Paddock yesterday or whatever. Paddock is going to replace one of them.
Right.
I kind of prefer to look at it as him replacing Maeda because Chris Paddock is coming back from Tommy John surgery, will probably be on some sort of workload limitation, and also just has question marks in terms of durability. Well, that's identical to the conversation we were having this time last year about Kenta Maeda, who actually hadn't even come back at that point. Maeda only threw 104 innings.
Right.
If healthy, Paddock will throw more than 104 innings. He might not be healthy, though. And so I think it's...
But that's the easy one to replace. Right. The tricky one to replace is Sonny Gray.
But I'm just thinking in terms of, like, how do you fill that spot? I think Paddock for Maeda is pretty much, like, a little close to apples there. And I don't... will it be difficult to replace 104 innings of basically a league average ERA? Right. Probably not. I think that's certainly within reason for a Chris Paddock projection. Replacing Pagán is more like eye of the beholder, right? Because it's like, well, yeah, you're going to replace 70 innings of a 2.90 ERA? Well, that's going to be tricky. That was really good. Or are you viewing it more, how do we replace our number 4 reliever? Right. In the kind of pecking order or hierarchy. Right. Well, that I think they can potentially do. Sure. I mean, Brock Stewart is stepping into the mix. Yes, They have more confidence in some of the guys we saw last season. If Louis Varland ends up in the bullpen, he would be a sort of a apples to apples replacement there. The Gray one though there is no replacement. Right. There's no replacement.
Even Gray wasn't a replacement.
Right, that's right.
right.
And so there's no replacing a Cy Young runner-up. There's no replacing 185 innings of 290
There
ERA.
are 5 free agents probably that are, or maybe 5 free agents that are better than Sonny Gray out there, or that you'd say maybe they're probably going to get more money or a better deal than Sonny Gray. Twins aren't getting any of them. Right. And in fact, they're probably getting worse than Kenta Maeda money is probably what they will hand out. They will not. They will not give out a $24 million contract to any of the pitchers that are on the free agent market.
Be surprised,
I don't think
for sure.
So, either you are looking at the potential trade options for somebody that similar to Pablo Lopez, that you're trying to bring in somebody. And I think that's one of the things I'm most interested in seeing about in the winter meetings, is that not so much are the Twins going to trade for a frontline starting pitcher during the winter meetings, but what sort of rumors and discussions are we hearing about?
Right. What are they trying to target? Basically, right? Like, are they? I think it's easy for people to be like, well, they should just do a Pablo Lopez trade again. Right. Well, that trade has worked out as well as it could possibly have worked out. Now, sort
They
of
had to give up Luis Ariz.
right, which, by the way,
also worked out about as well as it could work out.
a lot of people hated that, despised
right.
that trade
Yeah.
the moment it happened,
Right.
and even months into it, despised that trade. And there are still people who wouldn't want to do that trade. But the kind of thought process behind it, or the like stylistically, what you're trying to do with that trade is to identify a youngish veteran pitcher, because Pablo Lopez is like 27, but he had 3 or 4 years in the majors at that point, who has had success, who has proven to be an above average starting pitcher, but hadn't broken out fully due to health reasons, due to workload reasons, due to just consistency of performance, and saying to yourself, we can trade for this guy. I'm not going to say pennies on the dollar because Luis Ariz was a premium to pay, certainly, but we can trade for this guy at his current value, let's say, or perceived value, and then we believe he has more value that we can unlock. I could absolutely see them attempting to do a version of that again. Now, they've attempted to do that in the past. I mean, that's what they tried to do with Tyler Mahle, and they just never got a chance because he was hurt right away. They've tried to do that. I mean, for that matter, they kind of tried to do that with Sonny Gray and were successful.
Right.
They tried to do that with Joe Ryan from a prospect standpoint and were pretty successful. So that MO for a trade is absolutely one, and the Twins aren't alone in this. Whole teams would try to do that. Right. Which is, how can we trade for a
but the
guy?
Twins have consistently done it. Like it's
Right.
It's not just Gray. It's also Mahle and Maeda and Odorizzi. And I mean,
Maeda's a good example.
they have a history of doing this, not just over the last couple years. You know, Lopez and Gray being the ones that are sitting in the front of our heads, but they've done this since they came on board in 2017. They've been doing.
Well,
this.
I think part of it is by necessity. I mean, you can't, whether in free agency with just money, they can't pay market price for an ace or number one starter, because those guys get $150, $200 million. I won't say they can't, but they won't. And even on the trade front, you can't necessarily try to trade for a guy who is already established as a number one starter and already a frequent all-star type of guy, a Cy Young candidate, because there isn't untapped value necessarily to get there. You're paying a premium either in money, prospect capital, player value, or some combination of it. So from the Twins standpoint, they're kind of trying to say to themselves, how do we identify, let's say, a B-grade starting pitcher? Good pitcher. Occasionally will look like an all-star, maybe has some injury issues, maybe it doesn't. How do we trade B-grade value for that perceived B-grade pitcher and then turn him into an A-grade pitcher? And that's precisely what they did with Lopez. Now, doing that consistently from a front office standpoint, I mean, you do that more than a couple of times, you're going to go into a team Hall of Fame, as a front office. And so it's a little bit tricky, but I do think that would be more likely, certainly as a way to replace Gray, than trying to do it in free agency or trying to do it with in-house internal options. And so, as the winter meetings, so I'll be heading to Nashville Sunday. The winter meetings officially start Monday morning. They go through Wednesday. They used to go through Thursday. They go through Wednesday. We always get a lot of questions about, like, the winter meetings is one of those things that I feel like people, writers or front office people, they just talk about it as like, oh yeah, it's like, you mention it like you mentioned the Super Bowl. Right. People are just supposed to know what it is. Right. And then we get questions every day like, what exactly is the winter? Like, what even is this? And I've gone to, how many have I gone to? 4 of them now. This will be my 5th one. I went to 2 long time ago. I can kind of walk you through what it is. It ain't the Super Bowl. I mean, here's the thing. Like, it's a big event within the baseball world, but I think a lot of it is sort of the remnant of the value of face-to-face meetings before current technology was in place.
I agree with you. The value of the winter meetings. I mean, the winter meetings are literally organizations getting together to talk through various Major League Baseball administrative stuff. That's what that is what the winter meetings are, right? Where the value is it was also an activity, there's a lot of social time. There's a lot of meeting somebody at the bar, and there's, running into them in the hallway and gossiping about what who you saw talking in the corner. I mean, like that was the value of it for years and years and years. It was your one chance to, what would you think about this? Well, I don't know. What do you think about that? Like,
to sit across from somebody.
Right.
As opposed to doing it over the phone in a less formal setting. Mm-hmm. But now when there's,
Texting,
and Zoom and Slack and who knows what else, just email or whatever, the idea of, let's wait till we get to this hotel in Nashville. Right. It was in San Diego last year. And we can really sit across from, so-and-so team's GM and we can hammer this out. Well, there's less impeding you from hammering it out.
It also used to be a lot of, a free agent would be making the rounds there because he knows all 30 teams are there.
There's still some of that. You'll definitely see guys.
Absolutely.
I mean, all the agents will be there. Scott Boras always holds court once. And it's always funny to me, and I saw this last year in person. For 364 days a year, all baseball writers mock Scott Boras for the cheesy one-liners that he has and all the dumb analogies that he uses and all this stuff. And then he walks into the media room at the winter meetings, and everyone realizes he's about to go have a scrum and answer questions. Everybody runs over there and puts their recorders out, and they eat it up the same. That's it. So that's a lot of what the winter meetings is. It's front offices, agents, players, and then because they're there, media come along. But then it's also like MLB Network, MLB Radio will do live broadcasts from there. There's also a trade show. So, places will pitch teams on new technology. Here's a new version of, cameras you can set up to track this, or here's a new, whatever equipment. And there's also a job fair, which is people try to get internships and people try to get front office jobs, or people try to get even, coaching jobs.
MLB Comic-Con.
It really is. I mean, it's in the Opryland.
MLB off-season Comic-Con.
This year, which I've never been there, but I'm told it's like the most massive hotel ever, the Opryland in Nashville. And so, it really is all that. And I think, obviously, we tend to focus on the wheeling and dealing part of it and the front office part of it. Sure. But that's just a fraction of it. I mean, the Twins have so many staffers there because, like you said, they're having their own sort of internal meetings there because it's a good excuse to get together.
Or external meetings, right?
And so here's just a few things. I'll be there Sunday. It starts Monday. It goes through Wednesday. Wednesday afternoon is the Rule 5 draft. So that's kind of the official end of it. It used to be on Thursday morning. Now it's Wednesday afternoon. Obviously, if the Twins make some moves during this, or even a move during this, we will do an emergency podcast with me from Nashville and John from here. Even if they don't,
or from John from Vegas or whatever,
wherever you want to John from whatever alley he's slumped over in. But even if they don't make a move, I think we're going to try to do one. It's just fun.
Yes, right.
Here I am live from Nashville.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe I'll do it.
We'll be doing a Patreon live from Nashville. Probably
funny to do it from the hotel bar.
Be fine by me.
Just be like, who can I get to come over to this Zoom?
I love that idea.
Here's Dan Hayes. Oh, no, he's throwing up on my shoes. Let's bring in Ken Rosenthal. Again, I have a splash guard when I hang out with them. So, yes, job fair, trade show. It's a lot of just networking. There's a lot of, to be honest, just sort of gossiping and rumor mongering.
That is actually the biggest value of it. It's all the gossiping, right?
A lot of the times, so there's each team has suites or a main suite. Obviously, they all have their own rooms and stuff, but there's a Twins suite and there's a Tigers suite in this hotel or in every hotel. And so it's a way for agents to say, 10:30 I'm going to the Twins suite, 11:30 I'm going to the Red suite, 12:30 I'm going to the Yankee suite. And it's also a way for the teams to have in-person negotiations or just kind of shoot ideas back and forth. You'll see Falvey go into another team's suite. You'll see, but then also media then usually once a day goes up to that suite and does an interview with the front office. There's also media availability for Baldelli is speaking at 4:00 Monday afternoon or something like that. And so we haven't talked to him for a month. You can go ask him about stuff. But a lot of it then is there's always a media workroom, which is just a massive banquet hall, basically, in whatever hotel. And they just set up, long tables, endless rows of long tables. They give us a Wi-Fi password, and they let us plug in laptops. And we all sit in there, and what you see is, at the front of the room is always a stage, so that if there is a signing, they'll actually hold a press conference up there. They announce Hall of Fame stuff. They do other stuff like that. But a lot of it is just the click-clack of laptops going on as you have a couple hundred writers in there filing stories or whatever. A lot of it is just the murmur of us talking to each other. And then you'll just see when people are done with their story or they're just waiting for somebody to show up or they just have dead time, you just go out into the lobby of the hotel and you just look for people in baseball that you know or you want to know, and you just say, "What have you heard? You heard anything about that? What did hey, Boris say anything about that?" And that's really all it is. And sometimes you'll see teams go, "You hear anything about this?" A lot of the times you'll hear writers say that. So that's, for the most part, sort of what it is. Let's see. There's one other thing. I don't know. Less and less. It used to be like, well, it's been a slow offseason, but wait until the winter meetings. That's where all the action happens. Right. It's not really the case anymore. I mean, there will be signings. Like last year, Trey Turner signed and Judge signed during the winter meetings. But like, it's not, there's going to be 24 signings in these next 3 days now that everybody's here in place. Because, again, there's less holding you back.
Well, that is what I'm interested in seeing. There are a couple different things I'm interested in seeing what comes out of the winter meetings. One is, do we see some actual movement in the trade, in the free agent market, right? We just haven't seen much in terms of the big names. Nola was basically the one big name that we've kind of seen go so far. Everything else has been sort of, teams picking and choosing which guy further down the ladder they want to slightly overpay for, whether it's Maeda or Gibson or whatever, right? Is the one thing. The other one I'm interested in is I think part of what is holding up the free agent market is there's enough high-end pitching that might be available on the trade market that teams are like, well, maybe I don't want to give a 4-year deal or 5-year deal to Blake Snell when, I don't know what the Brewers are doing right now with Woodruff or whoever, right? And so
Burns, you mean?
I mean Burns, yeah. Woodruff, they know what they did.
Arm fell off.
That's right. You're right. Or Glasnow or whatever, right? And so it's, do we start hearing some teams talking about, potential trades? Do we find out, which teams are interested? And we're talking to the Brewers about, about acquiring some pitching. And does that mean that as a result of that, some of the free agent names end up going? I'm just looking for some sort of movement. Basically, is what it kind of comes down to.
I mean, there will be some trades and signings during this. I mean, it's just inevitable. I mean, first of all, at this point in the offseason, any 96-hour period, there's going to be a trade or signing. Probably. Other than Thanksgiving, Christmas block. Right. But yeah, you get everybody in place with the agents there and some players there and all the front office people there. And, it's like having a fantasy draft in person versus having a fantasy draft on ESPN.com or whatever. Like, it's just, there's a little more to it. But I do think a lot of the time what you're talking about happens, which is you get like to the goal line while you're there.
Right.
And then in the 10 days that follow,
you skip them.
You get into the end zone. And it's like, well, we did have a chance to talk nuts and bolts about a trade. We told them some guys we like. We told them the prospects we'd need, blah, blah, blah. We talked about it in Nashville. Then we went home. We thought about it. We got back to them. And we said, all right, now we're ready to make a deal. I think that it sort of greases the wheels for the next couple of weeks, because then the interesting part from a timing standpoint is this ends, end of the first week in December. Right. And then come like December 20th, the whole thing just shuts down. The whole industry shuts down through New Year's, I'm hoping. Nothing baseball writers like less than actual moves from like December 20th to January 5th. And so, I think there's a tight window of like 2 or 3 weeks after the winter meetings where it's like, all right, now let's get a whole bunch of moves done. Then everybody will take a 2-week break. Then it'll be the new year. And then it's almost like a slightly different phase of the offseason where it's not like leftovers, but it's more like, okay, now let's kind of let the dust settle here. What's left? Who still needs to be traded?
Well, I mean, just the level of activity itself is something I'm kind of monitoring. Like, are we going to get to the point where we're getting into, like we have been in, say 2018, 2019, where we get to January and we're like, why is nobody signed yet? Yeah, but the potentially, it feels like things are moving slow enough.
You mean league-wide, not just the Twins.
League-wide, yes. I don't think...
With the Twins, you might get there.
I agree. That's why I'm kind of interested in seeing what the overall level of activity is, because I think the Twins are coming in on the back end of whatever the level of activity is. Right? If things start happening here in December, the Twins are going to start being active in mid-January or beginning of January. Right. If things don't start happening until January, the Twins aren't going to be particularly active until we're going to have a scramble, almost like a post-lockout scramble.
Well, the Twins are very much counter-punchers in the offseason.
Right. This offseason they are. Without having a lot of money to spend, they are going to be...
I think they're that in general.
Well,
I think this offseason,
I think that's a good point.
They might not even
that's a very good
counter
point.
punchers. They might be,
Right.
let's let the guy punch himself out, and then we try to come in here and
It could be.
land
right.
some
You're
shots.
right.
But and so yeah, you need. I will say though, like it. I think there's been more money spent before the end of November than an average offseason, like an average normal offseason. I mean, there aren't a lot of big
maybe.
moves.
You're right.
I mean,
All
the
right.
$100 million plus players don't usually sign.
Yeah, right. I
Even
mean, that's
just
true.
Nola signing
Right.
is fairly significant.
Yeah.
Now he re-signed, obviously, but even Sonny Gray, like those are the type of moves that don't happen until December, January, usually.
Yeah,
I mean, they're just usually aren't. We said there's only 7 or 8
Yeah.
signings. That's honestly probably above average. It's not like a crazy amount or anything, a crazy number or anything. But so yeah, that's the winter meetings. I'll be there. We'll react to any Twins related stuff or just whatever gossip I come across there or whatever. You know, we can talk about other big signings too. I remember that last year I walked in and Trey Turner had just signed, and everybody was really annoyed because like people were just arriving from the airport, and then Judge, famously John Heyman, if people remember, tweeted at like 4:30 in
right.
the morning San
Yeah.
Diego time from the winter meetings, obviously from his hotel, I'm assuming. Arson Judge, not Aaron.
Right,
Arson Judge is signing with the Giants,
Right.
and that woke everyone up.
Right.
Everyone was getting texts and calls from their editors. Poor Ken Rosenthal and Jeff Passan and everybody else. And then by the time everybody actually like walked over to the hotel or walked down from their room at 8:30 a.m., let's say, that had already been walked back
Right, yes.
by Heyman. And obviously, anybody who watched baseball knows Aaron Judge didn't sign with the San Francisco
That's right,
Giants.
yeah.
He signed with the Yankees. Now, whether or not they had something in place there. And then I also remember we went out for to a pizza place with a bunch of the Athletic people. I want to say the second night maybe. And it's, midnight, and they were serving beer there and everything. Everybody's having a good time. And you start to hear the phone's buzzing on the table, and you go, oh, God. And it was the Padres had signed Xander Bogaerts for 200
right.
and something million.
Right.
And I thought, oh, good. Because I thought it was going to be Correa news
Right.
or something.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, good. And then I look across at the 2 Red Sox beat writers and their editor, and they go, all right, see you guys later. They just get up and have to walk back to the hotel and start writing. So that's a lot of what the winter meetings is. So I don't expect the Twins to be super active. At the same time,
I don't either.
It wouldn't shock me if they were to trade, one of the veterans we talked about, Polanco, Kepler.
If they're active, it's going to be a trade.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Farmer, Polanco, Kepler, something like that. Vasquez. Those are the veterans we talked about. I don't know. They're in a weird spot for all the television related reasons we talked about. Not only the idea that they're going to lower payroll, but they don't quite know even how much or for how long they're going to have to lower payroll for. They're also.
And we talked a little bit on the Patreon about they're probably targeting sort of a 1-year deal. You take a look at the deals that they have and the length of contract and how long they have everybody under contract for in their rotation. They're probably looking at if they're bringing on signing a free agent pitcher, they're probably limiting themselves to 1-year deals. Well, I don't expect that we're going to see those guys sign real quickly now, as opposed to when you've still got Snell and Montgomery and a bunch of other what's the guy from Eduardo Rodriguez, right? Not to mention Japanese player coming over and Shohei Ohtani. Like there's just so many big names out there still. I don't expect for that to start until some of those other ones have kind of been cleared the decks.
I think that's probably right. But on the other hand, if you're a team who needs an infielder or you need an outfielder, and Polanco and Kepler are, if not the better than every free agent option, there certainly would be one of the top 2 or 3 free agents at their position. And let's say you're a mid-market team or even a team that just doesn't want to give out a $75 million contract to, I don't know, Teoscar Hernandez or something like that. There's not really that much reason to wait on a trade like that. And I don't know that the Twins necessarily need to wait, because the thing is, like, I know the payroll issue and the revenue issue is frustrating, but I think even if they were maintaining their payroll in the, 17 out of 30 range, 155, 160 million or something like that, we'd still be talking about guys like Polanco, Farmer, Vasquez, Kepler as trade scenarios because of their age and contract situation and just what the Twins have elsewhere in terms of minimum salary to young guys at those positions. And so does this make it more of a priority to move them? Does it make the salary component more important than just the value and return component? Yeah. Does it mean they might trade 3 of those guys instead of 1 or 2 of those guys? Yeah, maybe. But in general, I mean, Polanco was going to be trade bait this offseason no matter what. Kepler has been trade bait, at least in my mind, for about 3 years. And, you know, same thing with Farmer, all that stuff. So I don't know. It's a tricky spot. I won't be shocked if they make a move or 2 during the winter meetings, but I don't know. I mean,
it also pays a lot more to free up some money now than it does to free up some money in February when it's harder to spend said money.
Yeah, although I don't think they'd spend the money now anyway, though. Like, if they were to trade Kepler or they were to trade Polanco or Vasquez, that frees up $10 million.
Right.
What are they going to do with that money on, December 5th?
You don't think they'll put it towards a free agent starting pitcher? I mean, I'm not. I don't.
$10 million deal. They could do that now.
I suppose that's
basically. True. I don't think they're in a free agent part of the free agent pool that really requires that much money. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, you just said you wouldn't expect them to go more than 1 year. I mean, you could do that now.
That's true. Right.
Because the thing about payroll is you can go over during the offseason.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, you could sign a guy and have your payroll balloon to 150 today and just know in the back of your head,
I'm eventually going to trade Farmer for some prospects.
We can trade a couple of these guys and make it even out from a spreadsheet standpoint. Let's see, a couple other small things, and then I'll get on a plane to Nashville. I'll be a little early if I leave now. But I like the, me. I like the
sure. Yeah, you like that country music.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait.
Get yourself to Kid Rock.
I am very curious. I've never been to Nashville. People always say it's a really good place to go for a little vacation and stuff. Okay. Becky's like jealous, I think, that I'm going.
Really? I haven't been there since 1995.
I'm sure it hasn't changed at all.
I'm sure, right?
But yeah, it doesn't seem like my vibe necessarily. I don't know what my vibe is necessarily. My apartment is my vibe, so that's Minneapolis. But
did you get yourself a cowboy hat or something like that?
No, I'll go shopping there for that. See if Chris Paddock wants to take me cowboy hat shopping. Yeah, a big belt buckle.
There you
Imagine
go.
I had a big Gleeman in the Geek belt buckle.
Oh.
Yeah, that'd be pretty.
You've got your marching orders, people.
I would be worried. And sometimes I say this to Beckham when we go out. I say, how do I look, in my standard blue sweatshirt with gray pants or whatever? Are you at all worried that too many women might come up to me? And I really fear if I got that big belt buckle.
Sure. The Gleeman and the hat, belt buckle, yeah.
I don't know. I don't have security or anything. Right. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe some chaps. Little vest.
Yeah, me and
a little leather vest.
Well, now you make me. I'm almost making myself sick thinking about this. Let's see, a couple things. The Twins re-signed Giovanni Moran and Ronnie Henriquez to minor league contracts. Yeah. We kind of hinted at this, or more than hinted at it. They were cut loose on the 17th or something like that of November from the 40-man roster. The plan, I think, all along was drop these guys from the 40-man roster, at which point they're free agents. They are free to go wherever, but the Twins' idea was we think we can get them re-signed to minor league deals. In the case of Moran, so minor league deal, well, why would they go through all that just to bring these guys back? Well, because a minor league deal means the player's not taking up a spot on the 40-man roster. And so Henriquez is a guy they got from the Rangers in the Mitch Garver kind of Falefa trade, and they liked a lot. He was a starter then, but they kind of viewed him as a multi-inning reliever. He's got
himself up the ladder. 2022,
small, skinny, kind of slings the ball up there, but mid-90s. But he just had a really bad. I mean, he had some injuries in spring training.
Yes.
Some arm problems, and he
just lost year.
He never really got right. He pitched a lot at AAA. He just never too many walks, not enough strikeouts. The stuff kind of came and went. He never got back to the majors, which was surprising because he pitched for the Twins in September, I think, last year or 2 years ago. And so they dropped him from the 40-man roster and re-signed him to a standard minor league deal, which means he'll probably be back in St. Paul to begin the season, but without a 40-man roster spot. In Moran's case, he's pitched for the Twins like 3 years now.
Right.
Struggled in the middle of last season to the point that they sent him down. and then hurt his elbow.
Continue to struggle and also hurt his elbow.
Struggled even more at St. Paul. And they announced that he's having Tommy John surgery, or might have already had Tommy John surgery. So he'll miss the entire 2024 season. So I haven't confirmed this, but I think this is the case. It'll be a 2-year minor league deal, which is how they signed, let's say, Brock Stewart when he was coming back from Tommy John from the he wasn't Dodgers, Blue Jays organization at that point. The idea is we'll give you some guaranteed money up front on a minor league deal. You're under our organizational umbrella, so we can help you from a medical standpoint and a rehab standpoint. And you're not going to pitch in 2024 if you're Moran, so that the first year of the minor league deal is essentially meaningless. But then what we get out of it by helping you through the rehab process is we get in 2025 if you're back to normal. And with Moran, from a service time standpoint, if he comes back in 2025 on the minor league contract and he pitches effectively, and let's say gets added back to the 40-man roster and called up to the majors, well, then he's just a normal major leaguer at that point, and he's not even arbitration eligible yet. So they would get another 3 or 4 years of control with him. So that's the hope with him. Obviously, Tommy John surgery, that nothing is guaranteed off that, but especially for a guy who had control problems before that. And then the last thing I have down to mention is that Mauer made his debut on the Hall of Fame ballot this year, first of a potential 10 years that he can be on the ballot. I had a lot of people asking if I have a vote. I do not have a vote. I would theoretically have a vote 6 years from now. You have to have 10 years as a BBWAA member. They would not let me join the BBWAA my first year of covering the Twins on a full-time basis. So that delayed. If Joe Mauer doesn't make the Hall of Fame 6 years from now or 5 years from now, you can, by one vote, you can blame that. So yeah, if I'm still here 6 years from now, I'll vote for Joe Mauer for the Hall of Fame. My hope is that he's already in at that point. And I think it's very early in the process, but so many of the ballots are public these days, and there are multiple places that like track the ballots, that you get a pretty good sense. It's kind of like election night.
Sure,
like you got 10% of precincts reporting. We know that this is the whatever. You can kind of do the math on it a little bit. What I would say to watch out for with Mauer's candidacy, I don't expect him to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm not a real big believer in the importance of first ballot versus anything, but there are enough people who do think there's a distinction there that Joe Mauer is not. Under that distinction, he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's the Mariano Rivera's and the Derek Jeters and other people who aren't Yankees that I could probably think of to mention. Beltre might be this year. He's first time on the ballot. He might get in. I mean, I would certainly vote for him. My thing is, the guy's either a Hall of Famer or not. The numbers don't change. It's not like 10 years from now. Now, in the case of like Blyleven, over the course of what used to be 15 years of eligibility, the perception changes because new numbers move to the forefront. At the beginning of...
I mean, he was part of the sabermetric revolution.
Which is so funny that he despises the people who worked so hard to get him into the Hall of Fame. But what I will say to look for as you see some of the ballots come in and get tracked, I just look at... there's some I think his name is Ryan Thibodeau. Does a nice job tracking him. On Twitter, you can look up, but you need 75% to get in, so that's unlikely first year. Generally speaking, if a guy debuts in year 1 out of 10, used to be 1 out of 15, at even 30 or 40%, you're almost assured of getting in. Now, barring that person doing something horrible off the field, or barring what we saw in some past recent years is there was such a backlog of candidates because they refused to vote in anybody associated with the steroid era. And so you didn't vote in Clemens and Bonds and Manny Ramirez and, Alex Rodriguez. And so then the sort of more marginal Hall of Fame candidates just left the ballot because there wasn't enough vote. Like Johan was 1 and done, I think, or 2 and done.
That's right. Yep.
And there were really good players like, I don't know, Kenny Lofton. I'm trying to think of some other players who should have spent 10 years, should have had their totals track up, like kind of how we've seen, and just didn't even get a foothold because there were so many guys that weren't getting voted in. That's not really the case now. And so I would say if Mauer gets 40%, 30 or 40%, 35, 40% or higher, obviously, that's a pretty good signal that 2 or 3 years from now, let alone 6 or 7, 8 years from now, he will eventually get in. And I think we've joked about this during his career. The perception of Joe Mauer is higher, the perceived value or greatness of Joe Mauer, just like in general,
nationally,
is higher outside of Minnesota than it is in Minnesota. And I don't mean that there aren't many, many, many Minnesotans who think he should be a Hall of Famer and loved him as a player and all that, but they're counteracted or canceled out by a very loud, annoying, I would say, minority, but not a it's a substantial minority who just thought Mauer could do no right. And, bilateral, they're still talking about bilateral leg weakness and the contract and didn't hit for enough power. Whereas on a national level, there's some of that. I mean, obviously, he didn't have a flawless career. There were issues in his career, injury issues, obviously. But on a national level, I've talked to so many people when he was playing, and even now as the Hall of Fame discussions are going on around him, who go, well, yeah, he won 3 batting titles and MVP as a catcher, right? 5 Gold Glove. Like, what are we talking about? Obviously, he's a Hall of Famer, and I personally, that is my belief as well. But I'm glad to hear that, and I do think it could be eye opening. Although now, as I say that, the same people who hate Joe Mauer aren't going to have their eyes open to much of anything in life or with Joe Mauer. But it potentially could be eye opening to see. He immediately got 44% of the vote, and 3 years from now he was voted in. And there are some people who are like, he shouldn't even be in the Twins Hall of Fame. Now, I realize that's the extreme version, but that's kind of my hope with Mauer's candidacy, is that it will start out not close to 75%, but closer to 75% than 0%, and close enough that based on the previous sort of cycle of these things, once you get near 40-50% early on, and you don't have any baggage, because Joe Mauer doesn't have really any baggage. No. Joe Mauer has like anti-baggage. Joe Mauer has such little baggage that people are like annoyed that he doesn't have baggage.
Yeah, he's the lightest traveler ever.
That's right. Yeah, only carries on. It's not like that. It's the light traveler Joe Mauer. That you add 5 or 10% a year, and then the other thing is there's almost like I don't want to say it's groupthink, but it's like once a guy gets to like 60%, people just go, all right, let him in. Go ahead. Like if you can get to 60% on like year 4, you will 100% get into the Hall of Fame, because there's not enough. No, people cease time and effort into keeping you out of the Hall of Fame at that point. You just go, yeah, fine, all right. As long as you're not like, Kurt Schilling or somebody like that. Which I don't think Joe Mauer will probably be. Okay, that's all we got. We will be back
next week with
Patreon side. Yeah, Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman. We would love to have you join us. I think for November, the total cost of subscribing to our Patreon for November was $4. That's what we're talking about during the offseason.
Yeah, that's right.
1 episode a week. They cost $1 when they come out.
Yeah, maybe 1 episode a week. Probably less in December. True.
And if we don't put out an episode, you're not charged. You're only charged when we put out, and you get the entire back catalog of hundreds of episodes for free. So
otherwise, by the way, your next free episode is going to be something like a week from Wednesday. It's going to be a week and a half out. We will not be doing one next Friday because I'm going to be in Vegas and I'm not going to be screwing around with a podcast while we're doing that. I think we're going to be doing a Patreon while he is at the winter meetings. Sometime middle of next week or I guess probably the middle of next week. Again, patreon.com, and check us out. Check out the Patreon.
Thank you to Raycon, Game Time, Grody Beef, and Soda Stick.
That's
for
right.
being our
Keep
sponsors.
them all in mind for your holiday gift giving.
And
thanks.
Look forward to the winter meetings and sharing news or non-news.
That's right.
Bye.
Bye. Gleeman